Hey, thanks for watching today's Drawing for Adults video. This video is brought to you by the Ann Arbor District Library and the Ann Arbor Art Center. Grab a pencil and a sheet of paper. If you have drawing pencils, that would be wonderful, but if you don't, any pencil will be just fine for today, and an eraser, of course, as well. So the first thing that we're going to do, we're gonna practice our shading. So grab your pencil, and I want you to practice holding your pencil in a couple different ways. So practice drawing a little squiggle how you normally would, write your name, okay? And then I want you to hold your pencil more towards the end of the pencil, towards the eraser if your pencil has an eraser, and also then kind of tilt your hand a little bit so that you are angling your pencil a little bit more parallel with your paper. So again, it's different than writing your name. If you write it the way, if you're holding it more upright, you're gonna get more lines. So you can see here the ones that we don't want and the ones that we do, the ones that are circled are the ones that we want for our drawing, okay? So that's going to give you a much more smooth kind of shading, because we want to have a really smooth transition from dark to light, and all those values in between. You don't want it to be a sudden jump from dark to light. Once you feel comfortable with that, we're going to create a grid on our paper, in our sketchbook, whatever you're using, and we're going to practice shading our forms. So we're going to do a cube, a cylinder, a cone, and a sphere. And then I think repetition is key when practicing drawing. So we are going to then repeat the process a second time with just plain old 3D forms, and then do it once again in an object of your choice. So for that last section, I would just recommend looking around your house for an object. It's ideal if you can draw it from life, if you can set it up under a lamp, and that way you'll have some really nice dramatic highlights and shadows, but just some kind of found object that is the same, roughly the same form as the ones from above. So let's get started. So in our grid, I'm going to label each of the different columns with the object I'm going to draw, and then what I'm showing you here is I am showing you where the light source is coming from. So I drew little suns and the light bulb for the cylinder, and so that's just showing that's the direction that the light is going to be hitting our object. So that helps me know where to basically not shade, right? If I know where my highlight's going to be, then if my paper is white, then I just have to leave it blank. The paper does the work for me. But what I have to make sure I'm doing is making that transition of values from dark to light. So that top one, the cube drawing, was a little off, so I drew another one below there, still probably a little bit rectangular, but that's okay. We're not really that focused on perspective today, so these are gonna be a little off. And then also, of course, where the light is also kind of helps us understand where the shadow is going to be. That's a whole really another lesson. So just trust me on that, but I'll kind of go more into that later. So what I just highlighted though was that ellipse, so you can see I'm practicing drawing that. We don't want to have it be pointed on the edges. It's not a lemon or a football. The edges are curved, but it also should be pretty narrow, okay? So on those edges, so you don't want them to be coming to a point. They should still be round. An ellipse is just simply when you see a circle, but you're seeing it more from the side. So you can see here on this one where I'm putting my core, my darker shadows here. It's not going all the way to that left side. It's just a little bit in, okay? And then same thing with the cone. The cone is going to be a very similar approach as my cylinder, so you can see the similarities between where those darkest darks are and then where those like mid-tones around it. I'm going to do that process one more time. So here's where that core shadow is, where my highlight will be. All right, and again, I'm making sure I'm using that side of my pencil, because if I'm not, then it's going to be very stripy almost, or just very linear. And then I'm kind of following a similar shape of my 3D object for my shadow. And then yeah, I'm kind of just assuming that the sun is kind of a little bit in front of these objects. I can't really show that because obviously this is a two-dimensional space here. So for the sphere is, I think, the most satisfying one to do. I am showing you right now where the core shadow is going to be. This is going to be my darkest darks, and then I'm going to make sure as I do this, I kind of wrap the darks, or the mid-tones, the darker mid values up around the circle, okay? And so that's going to help show that it is in fact a three-dimensional object. Now, I'm going to do this process again because I totally understand that it's tricky. I'm also going to shade in like a table or something so that these objects aren't just like floating in space, because it doesn't really make sense with the shadow that I have. So that's why I did that. Again, it's not like writing your name. So if you practice writing your name, draw that. Notice how you're holding your pencil. It's very upright. You should be tilting it. So practice that. Recognize what the difference is, in addition to just kind of learning a new skill. Practice going back and forth between the two. So hopefully this is helpful for you to see. Again, I recommend you doing it a couple of times as well, because I don't like the phrase practice makes perfect. I think that that's just not very accurate all the time, but depending on the situation, of course. But I do think that practice helps. And so I think that it's certainly helpful with drawing. The more times that you do it, even for me, doing this process is helpful. And I have drawn, I don't even know how many, 3D forms or whatever in my life. So anyway, so really take note of how I'm doing this, where that highlight is, where my shadow is. Notice the reflected light from the table, or that surface that's on that bottom part of the sphere, because I think that's also very important to note, because we see that core shadow, but a lot of people will just automatically assume that the very bottom of that sphere or circle that we're drawing is going to be the darkest part. But actually, depending on the, of course, the surface that the sphere is sitting on, a lot of times there's a little bit of a reflected light thing that's happening, and so it's not the darkest part. So again, that core shadow, I think of it as kind of like almost like drawing a little C, like a capital C or something, kind of in this, not quite the center, it's a little lower than the center. And then, notice that those lighter values also are not at the highlight is not at the edge, because again, that doesn't show that it's a 3D object. That doesn't show that it's rounded, that it continues on. There's another side of the sphere that we can't see. So anyway, just another thing to be taking note of. Again, practice. You can see some different details that I probably didn't even mention that I drew. So, pause the video as you're drawing. I think that's always really helpful, and take a closer look, zoom in if you can. And, yeah, I hope you enjoyed today's video, and, keep practicing. Like I said, look around your house for some fun, found objects that you can use to put it into, I guess, real life objects or whatever. So like, this is the idea of a marble, but I'm deciding to change it to a little globe. So anyway, so I hope you've enjoyed watching and learning how to draw 3D forms and shading. Really practice that angle of the pencil. I think that is everything. It makes the world of a difference. No pun intended if you got that. So anyway, I hope that you have a great time drawing today, and that you'll tune in with us next time.